our music is like super great. So people who are listening to this after the fact will know.
Yeah.
We're all dancing if you can't see us.
Well, let's get started. So, welcome to We've Got Issues, Girl. We are a weekly podcast for women who are curious about politics. My name is Carrie.
And my name is Sky. And we are joined today by Lori Olender, our friend, our dear friend running this year. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yes, Lori Olender, and lifelong resident of Lucas County, born and raised in Toledo. I have been in the area of law for 25 years now, and have been trying to become judge, have wanted to be judge, I think since my municipal court days 25 years ago. Whoa. And finally got the endorsement in December. And so here I am, the endorsed Democrat, and trying to campaign in a pandemic.
It's quite a thing. It's a bit of a challenge. I will say though, Lori, I have been seeing your signs all over the place, including on Brown Road in like Jerusalem Township, way out in the middle of nowhere. David and I were driving around yesterday. It was just like a breath of fresh air.
Well, they give me spots and we're going to take them because, the signs, this year's signs are a little different because people will be out and about and they're at least walking and doing that. So they might have a little more impact than they would on a normal year.
Yeah. It's still tough. But you've been out and about doing lit drops. Like, I feel like every day I see you post about it.
Well, what we're doing, so we're not knocking. And right. I know there are other people that are knocking, but we just don't feel it's appropriate. Now, if somebody's outside, I have my mask with me just in case. I will say this, it's given us an opportunity because some people, I don't have any problem speaking. I mean, I've been a trial attorney for, 23 years, but some people don't like to speak. So we actually have had a lot of nice volunteers who said, you know what, I'll go in my neighborhood and drop for you, because then if they do see their neighbors, then they're able to talk to them about me because they know me personally. So that's been a little bit of a plus for us.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yes, canvassing can be really intimidating for volunteers. We've talked about that a lot on the show. Not for Sky, though, because all of our listeners know Sky's favorite thing to do is canvass, and she can't this year, and she's dominating.
Oh, yeah. So sad this summer.
Are really smart, and you still kind of get out there, and people can see you working. And like Sky said, you've been working real hard since December, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little more about what you're doing and how you're reaching people during this pandemic, because it's such an odd year. There's no parades and festivals and the normal things. It's hard.
Yeah. So I started when I did get the nod in December. If people go back to my Facebook page, I was going even then. In fact, I was getting told to slow down because I was going to, everything I could go to. Rotary in Oregon that had like 15 people. Julia Bates is my boss at the prosecutor's office. And when she ran show, I said, if there's 3 people under a light bulb, you're there. And so that's the way I started. And then the pandemic hit, and it was literally like 4 days from my second fundraiser. And we had already put a lot of work into it. It was my friends and family. We ended up making that go virtual. I have a lot of support with social media. I have a wonderful I'm not the most clever on social media, but she's fantastic. And I already had a really good social media presence as it was. So it was really nice to just pick up and be able to put different things on there I'd never done before. We've done videos. We did a couple of go lives. We shot my commercial, which is like 51 seconds long. And we put that out there. And so she's done a lot of good things with my union. I've gotten a lot of union endorsements, and she's done great with the graphics. So it's nice to have that person, because that's about all I can do right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough.
Everything's virtual.
The virtual fundraisers are nice though, because you don't have a lot of overhead. Like you said, you had already put so much effort and work, and it costs a lot of money to throw a fundraiser like that in person. Right. So without a lot of overhead, you can, it's an efficient way to raise money, at least.
Exactly.
That's a plus.
So we have listeners from all over, mostly Ohio, but we have listeners from all over the country. And so kind of explain a little bit, because judicial races in Ohio are a bit different. You are the endorsed Democrat, but you don't have a political party on the ballot. So you have two things that you have to do when you campaign. I guess you have to ask people to vote for you, but then also remind them that you're the Democrat. But then there's also some other rules, judicial canons, that prevent you from talking about how you would rule on the bench, right? Because you're supposed to be non-biased. So how is it, what is it like campaigning as a judge when you don't really have like a platform to run on, and you don't have a Democrat on the ballot by your name? Like, you kind of have to get a little creative, I imagine.
Well, and even it's so interesting you say that, because so I was canvassing a couple of weeks ago, and it was it was somebody I knew had it was my old mail person, stopped me and said, hey, somebody said you're running as a Democrat, but you're not really a Democrat. And I'm like, well, I am. And then he's like, why wouldn't it be by your name? I go, well, that's the law. You can't have a Democrat or Republican by your name. And it's interesting because, a Democrat is who I was always raised to be. But on the bench, you have to be fair and impartial. And it really doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. And, I've been a prosecutor 22 and a half years, practicing 25 years, been in front of pretty much almost every judge in Toledo. And I'll tell you this, whether you're Republican or Democrat, there is because we have to be fair and impartial, you don't see there's no standard, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, it is difficult, and it's difficult, but I feel like I do have a platform in that I've been a prosecutor for 22 and a half years, and I prosecuted child abusers in the adult division for 9 of those years. Wow. And now I'm in the juvenile court. And so I feel like I've always, and I say this even as a public defender, I've always felt like I protected the public. Because ultimately, I think the person on the bench, your goal is to never, on criminal cases, to never see that person in front of you again. Now, sometimes it might mean a sentence to jail, but sometimes it might be mean probation. It's about making sure that they don't do the same act or a different act and come in front of you again. So I believe that I've been protecting the public for 25 years.
Yeah.
That's an amazing track record, and your work is so inspiring. Tell us more about that work that you've done. Where did you start? How did you decide to become a lawyer? All those fun things.
Well, that's interesting, because I'm one of these weird people. I wanted to be a lawyer when I was 9.
Oh, cool.
Yes. In fact, we just pulled out my old 6th grade wish book, and it's asked us all what we wanted to be, and mine said, of course, lawyer. I didn't know criminal lawyer back then. But I stuck with it, and I was in the public defender's office in law school, got my first job in the public defender's office in juvenile, but stayed there only a short stint, and then was hired in January of 98 to become what they called the child victim prosecutor in the adult division of Common Pleas, where I'm seeking election right now. So basically for 9 years, I went to all 10 courtrooms, because we had what's called vertical prosecution. So when you're dealing with children who've been sexually or physically abused, you want one person to see them the whole time. Yeah. Okay. And there's 10 courtrooms in the adult division. And at that time, there were 20 prosecutors, 2 to each courtroom. And they moved. So the child could keep seeing different people. So they discovered it was much better that I would see them from the moment we first got the case. I would take it to grand jury myself and not have the grand jury prosecutor interview them. And I would take them all the way through to the verdict and then the follow through afterwards. And so I learned a lot doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And learned a lot about how to do the job that you are seeking right now.
Yeah, I tried close to 70 jury trials, which is kind of a lot. You don't even somebody, right? Because in child abuse cases, people tend to not want to plead, whether it be no contest or whatever, you don't get pleas, you'll get a lot of trials. So I had 1 year, I had upwards of 12 jury trials.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about different judges, and, picked up things, because I've always known in the back of my head that I'd like to, run for judge. I've always felt like a little bit here and there I've picked up or tried to put away things I wanted to emulate when I sat on the bench. Yeah. So that was good. And then I moved to juvenile, which was also good because now I've been training young prosecutors to become trial attorneys in our adult division. So I'm still highly connected to that division. In fact, most of the prosecutors in our adult division have come from my office.
Oh, awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
The work that you do is so fascinating to me because it has to be so satisfying to, like, you know, your law and order, you're putting the bad guys in jail, right? But also it's got to be pretty heartbreaking. I mean, some of the cases that you've tried are probably real nasty stuff, right?
Yeah.
In the child abuse cases, absolutely. But I can always feel at the end of that really good about it. And with juvenile, it's really interesting since I'm the head of our juvenile division. And so what I have kind of learned though in juvenile, which I don't think, I say this and I mean it truly, I don't think I would have been as good of a judicial candidate had I stayed doing the child abuse cases and went straight there, because I think I only had one perspective. Where in juvenile court, there's so many changes, doing detention alternatives with the youth and trying not, because like I said, protecting the public doesn't always mean a jail sentence. Sometimes it means a community control sentence. And that's what I've really learned in juvenile. And when you do child abuse, you don't feel that way quite as much as you can with other crimes. So I'm really happy for that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I'm glad to hear you say that too, because that was another thing I was thinking. Like, not only are the abuse cases probably very heartbreaking, but it's got to be pretty heartbreaking to see these kids committing crimes and then, you know, having to go to trial. And I mean, we can talk all day about how Black Lives Matter and then the cycle, you know, this the cycle that these kids fall in, and trying to dance across that line of, like, you know, wanting justice and wanting an appropriate punishment, but and also like realizing that these are kids, and it's got to be a pretty hard place to be in sometimes, I imagine, as a prosecutor.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you do to sort of decompress and give yourself space to process all this? I know, at least I worked in an abortion clinic for a long time. Carrie was the same way, and you internalize a lot of the stories that you hear. And so it's really heavy and it's easy to burn out. I burnt out pretty poorly. But so how do you sort of process all of those things?
You know, I think I've always had this great ability. You know, the 9 years I did child abuse, the first couple of years, every year they'd be like, "Are you doing okay? Do you feel like you're getting burnt out?" And I just kept saying, no, I'm okay. And then about after year 4, they stopped asking me, because I didn't ever get burned out. I always felt it was important work. I mean, some of those kids are now Facebook friends with me, and have found me. I mean, I feel amazing about that. I've always been able to go home, and not that I don't think about it, but I'm a big reader. So I can get, you know, I can go and then, you know, get out of that. And I can do that. And so, and I'm really close to my family. So, you know, we're big into football. We have Cleveland Browns season tickets. I know that's sad, but we do. And so, you know, I can
learn a lot about loss then, didn't you?
Exactly. So yes, but we'd go every week, and you know, we tailgate together. And so my family has just always helped me be able to go home, and even through this campaign, which is extremely stressful when you can't you know, when you have no idea what's really going on out there. And so that's the way I just kind of can put it aside.
Yeah. So I imagine that we talk a lot about in this podcast about, you know, being a woman in politics, why it's important to get more women in politics. But I also imagine that, well, I know this from my own experience too, but the being in law is also pretty male dominated too. And so I imagine that often the judges that you are in front of have been men. Perhaps the defender that your case is against has been a man. Do you find yourself often the only female in these positions?
Yes. In fact, so a trial I had a couple of years before I went into juvenile, the oddest thing happened where that everybody in the courtroom was a woman except for the judge and the defense attorney and the defendant. It was myself and another female prosecutor we put on 2 girls, we put on their moms, we put on a female detective and a female children's services caseworker. And we said, wow, this is really odd. But yes, the only 3 people in the room that were males were, the judge, defense attorney, and the defendant. So, usually you're pretty much outnumbered.
Yeah, I bet. And then even now you're throwing your hat in the ring and you're running to be a judge against a male. So do you find it hard to run as a female? Have you run? I mean, I know this year is different, so you're not out and about as much as you want to be, but are you finding any differences the way people treat you as opposed to they treat your candidate or your opponent? I'm sorry.
I haven't really seen, again, it's really hard because we can't go anywhere. I do feel like the good thing is I feel like I've always had the respect and the support of the defense bar in Toledo. We have such a good defense bar in Toledo, such good camaraderie that you just don't find in other cities. And so I felt really hugged by this, and especially the generation, they watched me grow up, the older and into the law, and they've known that I wanted to be a judge. So I have some really great role models out there that are pushing for me. So no, I actually feel like I've been really supported.
Awesome. That's great. That's good. That's great.
We've got a couple folks. Hi, Dad. Always, Dad's in the comments. First one to comment, Dad. And Sherry, my old coworker, is asking how you feel child abuse is handled overall, generally. I don't know if that's something that you can speak to or if it's too specific.
Well, child abuse is really hard. So the interesting thing for me, since I started in 98, I came right off the cusp, and hopefully this will answer the question. And I'm not trying to be political about it. I'm just trying to put it in words I can figure out, is that I just came off the cusp in 98 of people 10 years before. People were still trying to hide child abuse. It didn't happen. It was a family problem. You didn't bring it into the light. So I got out. We were ahead of it already. You guys, it's difficult. I mean, we're already past children being told in school, make sure, stranger danger and all that, except I'm going to be honest, in 9 years, most of my cases weren't stranger danger. They were relatives or, you know what I mean? And so I think that we do, sadly, the amount of child abuse cases that go through the system, I think you guys would be astounded, because literally you have the reports from children's services, and they'll have this many, and then it squeezes down into how many can actually be investigated by the police. And then again, how many can actually be prosecuted. So do I think it's perfect? No, but nothing is. And it's always a learning experience. It's funny that, yes. So tomorrow I'm actually doing a training with the sexual assault nurse examiners. So I don't still just do child abuse, but I still feel it's really important to work with that and make sure it's a well-oiled machine and that everybody's doing the best job they can, because it's so important to people. If we do decide to go forward and we can prosecute, that we do it right.
Yeah. And you need all of those actors in the whole process to be well aware of how to handle young people and mental health professionals, social workers, nurses. I mean, all of those people need to be well trained. So important. That's awesome that you're still doing that.
Yeah. So who are you training tomorrow? You're training nurses?
Yes. So the nurses, now the sexual assault nurse examiners, they call them SANE nurses. They are, and they don't get, goodness, I love them so much because they are doing this voluntarily. They pick up these extra shifts. They're usually ER nurses, and they decide to go through this training, and they're trained in, how to do exams. And it's so a doctor who sees a million patients isn't looking at a woman who was traumatized or a little kid who was traumatized, whatever age it might be. So there's a courtroom process to this. Now, they're doing everything, I believe, via Zoom and via computer for this training, except what I like to do, and they're not prosecutor witnesses, okay? They're just witnesses, but they don't sign up to be witnesses.
Yeah.
And so, you know how intimidating it could be to be on the witness stand and never have been on the witness stand before. So what I do is I bring them in and we just give them a little taste. We sit them down. We give them a set of medical records that were from years ago that we used, we Jane Doe'd it, and they look through those, and then I go through and direct examine them. And so they get a taste. And so it's a lot smoother for them. They don't get those nerves that I used to see so much before I started doing that.
Wow. And it probably helps them to be able to, like, they're going to know what to look for because they know what you're going to ask or what someone will ask. And that just probably helps them be, better able to handle victims too. Cause I'm sure that is like a crazy, talk about trauma in the workplace. That's gotta be pretty hard too. And so, that's really cool that how long have you been training those SANE nurses?
Well, I've been doing the training pretty much my whole time I've been a prosecutor, but the in courtroom, when I decided to start putting them on a stand, I had a nurse. She was a lovely lady. This was probably, I don't know, maybe 18 years ago. And she got very upset on this. I mean, she just got so nervous. She was shaking. And I thought, I never want to see this happen again. So I'd say we've been doing the courtroom questioning part, at least like maybe 10 or 12 years, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah, very helpful, especially because, I mean, Sky and I have worked in for different women's organizations and have kind of been on not so much the nurses side, but more as the victim advocate in a way. And so it is without proper training or the right tools to know what to ask for, know the right questions to ask. I mean, even the victim themselves won't respond the way you want them to either. So that's pretty difficult place to be in. So as just for my own knowledge, because I don't really know that many prosecutors, what is your interaction with victims? Do you talk to them a lot? Like, do you interact with them like one-on-one all the time?
Yes. And we worked all through COVID. We were closed a little bit, but I actually tried a case, I think the first week COVID hit. So yes, not quite the same as it used to be with the child abuse cases because I saw them so many times. Juvenile court is much faster than adult court because when a youth is held in juvenile court, they cannot be held without some kind of hearing for more than 15 days. Now, of course, there's continuances, but cases in adult court, I could see a victim, the case can get continued, for a myriad of reasons in adult court, and you could have a case for 18 months. You never have that in juvenile court. Cases are done within 6 to 8 weeks generally. A lot of times, I'll only meet the victim one time. So, and I've tended to, because I want to train my new people, I've tended to only take like our certification cases where a youth, maybe there's been a murder or something, and we're going to look to send them to the adult division. So I'm usually talking to victims' families. But I think it's really important, and we have a victim assistance person, but I've always felt that victims want to speak to the prosecutor themselves, and they want the information from them. So I always make sure I try to make contact with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a case at the clinic when I worked there of, oh gosh, I can't even remember. This crazy protester was threatening the staff, and we filed charges against him. And I worked with I was a representative from the clinic when we went to court. And eventually the charges were dropped. But I worked with the victim assistance program. They were super helpful, made me feel really good about being there, and were really responsive. It was great.
Yeah, much needed.
Yes,
much needed. Yeah,
they've always made victim assistance a real priority in the prosecutor's office since I've been there. It's just so important. But because I did those child abuse cases and I've always been hands-on, I've never, and there's nothing wrong with having your victim assistant person because they're, that's what they're trained to do. But like I said, I've always just felt that it was important for me to keep my own finger on the cases and speak to the victims whenever I can.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, you always have struck me as someone that really loves their job and is very good at their job, but now you want a different job. So tell us about that transition will look when you get elected, when you become a judge. Like you're going to have to give up being a prosecutor. You're probably going to have to learn some new things. Like what kind of things are you thinking about, that what is that transition going to look like for you?
I'm actually really excited about it. I'm excited to actually be the one on the other side. I've watched so many judges make decisions. And, you know, sometimes you make a recommendation and it doesn't get followed or gets ignored and something else happens. It's just, I'm very excited for that part. I'm also very excited. I've done criminal law, and criminal stuff is that to me is what I think, at least in the past, has made really good judges, having that criminal experience, because it's the thing that moves a lot faster in adult court. But I'm sort of excited about the civil stuff because I love to learn new things, and I'm kind of odd in that I do like to research. And so I'm kind of excited to learn a new facet of the law. I've been doing the same thing for 25 years. So it'll be great. That'll, and the ease, hopefully, that I'll have with the criminal side will help me to learn more about the civil side.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I definitely think your courtroom experience is like, no one has courtroom experience like this. Like that's crazy, the amount of courtroom experience you have. So,
and you get to learn from the best and the worst. So you know what is good and what's bad. And you've been on the other side of it. So you understand how to interact with victims, with prosecutors, with attorneys, you know, the whole gamut.
Right. Yeah, like I was gonna say, what are some of the good things you've learned from judges? Like what are the characteristics of a good judge?
Well, I think, you know, for one thing, I think making sure that you respect everybody in your courtroom, everybody, you know, down, you know, the defendant included, defendant's family, everybody. I think you need to make sure that you're fair to each person that comes in and that you don't prejudge. And that you listen to what everyone says. And, you know, interestingly, from a prosecutor's perspective, like I've never felt like, because we're the state of Ohio, we're not just for the victim, you know what I mean? We're representing the state. So we've always had a responsibility. We are ethically bound ourselves as prosecutors not to take a case forward that we don't believe we have sufficient evidence for. And so I feel like you're already in a better position to make that judicial move, because you're not just one-sided. You have to think about the other side, and you have to weigh what you have and make sure you don't prosecute just to prosecute. That's not what you do. And so, I feel like it's, you know, those are things I've learned, you know, patience. And I'm not always a patient person. I mean, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more patient, and that's great. And that does come from time. But, you know, I've seen judges that, you know, lose their patience, or, you know, I don't want that professor you had in college and you didn't pick up something really quick and they didn't understand how you didn't pick it up. You know, that's what I want to be careful not to be, that, you know, I don't want to be, I'm the judge, so I know everything. I've always been, if my people come to me and ask me a question, I could say, oh, yes, this is the answer. But then if I find out later that it's not, I will make sure I say, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right. I did not know that. Or if I don't know it, I go look it up. I don't just tell them to go find the answer and come to me. So those are things I've learned from some of the best judges here in Toledo.
I think that humility is important in elected officials and people in power, because we see so many right now who don't have any level of humility or empathy. And it's just like something I'm craving. I was telling Carrie this at lunch today. I've been binge watching episodes of West Wing because I need like good people in my life and politics. And, you know, it's just like, I just have been soaking it up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. Especially, I mean, we're less than 60 days away from the election. Things on the top of the ticket are super heated, and it's hard to even have a conversation with other people across the aisle. So but okay, speaking of West Wing though, is your job like straight out of Law and Order? Like is that what you feel like? Because I know that, like, if people were to picture your TV show, like, are you Mariska Haggerty, or like who? Like, no, she's the detective. Who, like, is your job Law and Order basically?
Actually, it's I would say maybe Law and Order gets it right sometimes, but yeah, I will tell you, it's the bane of every prosecutor's existence, all the CSIs and everything, because especially with child abuse cases, you have a lot of cases that don't have DNA, don't have fingerprints, and you have to do a whole part of your jury selection has to be on teaching them that this is not CSI and we don't have compute, you know what I mean? And you're not going to find a microparticle that's going to give you the answer, so no, I mean, sadly, no, it's really not like anything on TV, to be honest. In 22 and a half years, I think I did have, and you guys are younger than me, and I'm actually younger than it, but we'll call it one Perry Mason moment that just like everybody was like, whoa, but that doesn't happen very often. Nobody stands up and says, I didn't. There's no glove involved in anything. So we don't usually get too many surprises when you're trying a case.
I know, but I think for some people and probably a lot of our listeners, the closest they'll ever get to a courtroom, unless they're a lawyer, is Law and Order. So I just wanted to clarify because it's a common misconception, I think, for a lot of people. It's not always as sexy as you see it on TV. Same as The West Wing, though, right, Guy? Like we work for a number of elected officials, and things don't
Not
quite
like
happen like they do on the TV show.
Right.
No. They're just regular old people, just like us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Law and Order doesn't do it bad, though.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they show you the whole process, at least, I mean, albeit in an hour show, but at least they show you the part about the investigation and the prosecution. So that's the only, and I try not to watch legal dramas at all because it's just frustrating when there's things that I know are incorrect. And so it kind of drives me a little crazy. So,
yeah, my husband watches them all the time, and like his favorite thing to do is to yell at the judge, and he'd be like, "You can't do that!" Like it's a TV show. Like, calm down. Oh God, it's so annoying.
He can't help himself. I feel like it's probably really satisfying to just be right and be like, "You, TV judge, are wrong."
Wrong, yes.
And he always does that too. He's like, "No, they can't do that." Oh wait, I don't know New York law. No, you probably can't do that. Like, it's just funny the way he has this internal argument, but.
I love
it. So before we sign off, we want you to be able to give one last pitch. So how can our listeners find you, follow you, donate to you? Where can they find you?
Okay, so I am my Facebook page is Lori Olender for Judge. And you can email me if you have any questions. I have an email, olenderforjudge@gmail.com. And my website is voteolender.com. And both my website and my Facebook page have nice little donate buttons right there. And it makes it real easy. And all the information is on both of them. And you can look on my website. You can see all my and union endorsements I've received. And I think a really good bio, both on my Facebook page. That's the thing that's sad. I feel like people, through this whole thing with Facebook, they see Democrat or Republican and they get a preconceived notion about how you're going to be as a judge. And it's sort of interesting. And so I invite people to look at my bio because I think they would change their minds once they looked at my bio and saw what my background was, to know, what my demeanor and how my stance will be as a judicial or judge on the bench.
Yeah.
It's important.
Agree. So we will link all of this in our show notes and on our Facebook. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. This is
so great.
To know you a little better and your career. You have a fascinating career. So that was really interesting to hear about that. And good luck. We have
thank
less
you.
than 60 days. We're almost there. It's crunch time now. I know you're feeling it. Everybody's feeling it. Yes. So but we will we'll link to everything so everybody can find more about you and like your social media page. Also, we're going to include you in our 60 days of action that we've launched with We've Got Issues Girl. So it launched Friday. So we're sending daily emails of little ways that you can get involved in this election. And so we'll include your information too, so we can get you some donations and some Facebook likes and just spread the word about Lori Olender running for Lucas County Common Pleas. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for everybody who tuned in the comments. We love seeing your comments live. If you're listening on your podcast app, we're glad you're tuning in there too. So join us again next week. We'll be back for a brand new episode. We have a surprise guest next week.
Ooh.
We don't even know who it is yet.
We don't know yet.
It's a surprise for everybody.
We are going to have a surprise guest to talk to us about the Biden campaign. And so we don't know who it is yet, but rumor has it it's a celebrity, like an actual celebrity. So
we're
kind of
to stardom, folks. You knew us when. Just get ready.
Yeah. So we're excited about that. So thanks again, Lori. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next week. Don't forget to like and review us on your podcast apps. Follow us here on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Instagram. We're also on YouTube. We're all over the place. You can't get away from us. So
right.
We'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank y'all.